I'm reading Joshua chapter 2, and I'm reading from the Living Bible. Then Joshua sent 2 spies from the Israeli camp at Shittim to cross the river and check up on the situation on the other side, especially at Jericho. They arrived at an inn operated by a woman named Rahab, who was a prostitute. They were planning to spend the night there, but someone informed the king of Jericho that 2 Israelis who were suspected of being spies had arrived in the city that evening. He dispatched a police squadron to Rahab's home, demanding that she surrender them. They are spies, he explained. They've been sent by the Israeli leaders to discover the best way to attack us. But she had hidden them, so she told the officer in charge, "The men were here earlier, but I didn't know they were spies. They left the city at dark as the city gates were about to close, and I don't know where they went. If you hurry, you can probably catch up with them." But actually, she had taken them up to the roof and hidden them beneath piles of flax that were drying there. So the constable and his men went all the way to the River Jordan looking for them. Meanwhile, the city gates were kept shut. Rahab went up to talk to the men before they retired for the night. "I know perfectly well that your God is going to give my country to you," she told them. "We're all afraid of you. Everyone is terrified if the word Israel is even mentioned. For we have heard how the Lord made a path through the Red Sea for you when you left Egypt. And we know what you did to Sihon and Og, the 2 Amorite kings east of the Jordan, and how you ruined their land and completely destroyed their people. No wonder we're afraid of you. No one has any fight left in him after hearing things like that. For your God is the supreme God of heaven, not just an ordinary God. Now I beg for this one thing. Swear to me by the sacred name of your God that when Jericho is conquered, you will let me live along with my father and mother, my brothers and sisters and all their families. This is only fair after the way I've helped you." The men agreed. "If you won't betray us, we'll see to it that you and your family aren't harmed," they promised. "We'll defend you with our lives." Then, since her house was on top of the city wall, she let them down by a rope from a window. "Escape to the mountains," she told them. "Hide there for 3 days until the men who are searching for you have returned. Then go on your way." But before they left, the men had said to her, "We cannot be responsible for what happens to you unless this rope is hanging from this window, and unless all your relatives, father, mother, brothers, and anyone else are here inside the house. If they go out into the street, we assume no responsibility whatsoever. But we swear that no one inside this house will be killed or injured. However, if you betray us, then this oath will no longer bind us in any way." "I accept your terms," she replied, and she left the scarlet rope hanging from the window. The spies went up into the mountains and stayed there 3 days, until the men who were chasing them had returned to the city after searching everywhere along the road without success. Then the 2 spies came down from the mountain and crossed the river and reported to Joshua all that had happened to them. "The Lord will certainly give us the entire land," they said, "for all the people over there are scared to death of us."
Morning, everyone. So the second of our rescuers. Well, we had 7 last time, but second of our series of rescuers. Today, Rahab. If I get mixed up when I say Hagar, throw something at me. I realised when I spoke about Hagar a few months ago, I said Rahab. So if I get them mixed up, throw something at me. Rahab. And so the story today is kind of chapter 2, but it also then flows into chapter 6 of the book of Joshua. And this story and the bit where the walls fall down and all that stuff, if we are honest, is a tough read and makes us feel uncomfortable. And with everything going on in the Middle East at the moment, makes us feel maybe even more uncomfortable. When we think of the name Rahab, what springs into mind? Prostitute? Rescuer? Liar? Woman of faith? Hebrews 11 lists her in the Hall of Fame of the great people of faith in the Old Testament. The one who keeps the spies safe, the spy keeper. Maybe an innkeeper. We like the name innkeeper, makes us a bit more comfortable with a Bible hero than prostitute. I'm not going to go into it, but the beginning of chapter 2, the way that it is worded, and particularly the way it's worded in the original Hebrew, is full of innuendo. Is really not giving us a choice to think she's just an innkeeper. She's a prostitute. But when we think of that, we also need to remember that she probably didn't grow up as a little girl saying, "Mummy, Mummy, one day I'm going to grow up and I would love to be a prostitute." This is someone, maybe herself or a family, caught up in debt, poverty, and circumstances that would have driven her to this. She was somebody in the margins of society, a Canaanite, a woman, a prostitute. She lived on the edge of the city. And to just give everyone a quick catch up of where we were, we did the whole series on Genesis. It finishes with Joseph in Egypt, and then we began the book of Exodus, the book of a rescuer called Moses. But we found his rescue was only possible because of the magnificent seven, the 7 women who in different ways get together, well, not get together, but together as a whole, rescue Moses. And then after that is the story of Moses and the rescue of God's people, and they're in the desert for 40 years, and then Moses dies, and Joshua becomes the new leader, and God tells him to be strong and courageous, enter the land, and so he secretly sends some spies. He doesn't send the obvious bit, which is spies who need to be secret, but he secretly sends the spies. He's hiding from everybody else what he's doing. Joshua is lacking faith. And so the city of Jericho was on a mound, probably had a set of walls, at least 2, possibly 3 walls. These are big, thick, 2 meter at least walls. And the spies get in and they go to Rahab, the woman on the margins. Why do they go to the local prostitute? These are not particularly good spies. Because if they were that secretive, they were soon found. Information leaked. And so the king issues the order, bring them out to me. And so Rahab is left with a choice. Does she rescue them, or does she turn them in? And so she says, oh, they were here, but they've gone. Go, 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 chase them. And off they go in the chase while she's hidden these spies in the roof. You know, we like things that are neat and tidy in the Bible. We like the things that make us feel comfortable. The story does not necessarily make us feel comfortable. And so I'm going to put up, I've got one of our Menti questions. It's just one Menti question today that will come up on the screen. I want you to talk about it, but I don't want you to answer it. So this is a poll rather than a word cloud that we've done before. So if we could switch across to the other screen for a moment. So I'm going to give you 4 options on should Rahab have lied. So the answer, is Rahab's lie okay? Yes, it's okay, as lives were saved. Yes, it's okay, it was war. No, it's not okay, but it's the lesser of 2 evils. Or not okay, she just needed to have a bit more faith and God would have saved the day. So I realise there are some more options that you could have, but to keep the options down, wonderful. So have a quick discussion and then we're going to watch a bit of video and then I'll get you to actually fill in your choices. Do we like tidy? We like things neat. The Bible clearly says, do not lie. Well over half of us say, though, in that circumstance, it is okay. We like things that are neat and tidy, but somehow things can be more complicated sometimes and more messy. So, was what Rahab did wrong? It isn't a white lie, really, if that's the phrase. But what it is a sacrificial act to try and rescue people. Because she didn't know at that point she was going to get away and be able to be rescued. If the king's men had come through, she was dead. If they had gone in, she would have been executed. She risks all to rescue. She is a rescuer. And it's a rescue act rooted in a faith in a God she has heard about. Rahab makes the Hall of Fame in the book of Hebrews in the New Testament because she is a woman of faith. She has heard what God has done. It says in verse 10 in our passage today, and then she puts it into action. Hebrews 11 starts with this. Now faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance of what we do not see. She hadn't seen all the things that the rest of them had done when they walked through the sea and all that kind of stuff. But she heard about it and she put faith in God. She has this incredible declaration of faith in the God of heaven and of earth. And the reality of Rahab's faith is shown in her actions. A statement of faith, being able to say your faith is nothing if it is not followed up by actions. And in James 2, he mentions her too as an act of someone who put their faith into action. And it is a constant challenge for us all to step up and do the right thing. Would we have done what Rahab did? Would we have done what the 10 booms did? Rahab had faith in God, not in walls. She goes, okay, this is a huge wall, it's a strong wall, I live in the wall, this is a safe place to be. But she had a faith in the God of heaven and in earth, not in walls. And she had a choice. Shall I try and stick it out and just trust in these walls, or shall I trust in God? And we can all put our faith in the walls that we think keep us safe. It could be our work. It could be our skills. It could be our health. It could be friends, it could be money. None of those things are bad things. But ultimately, who do we trust? And if those walls were to fall, then what? Rahab was part of God's plans. And how do the spies report back to Joshua? They use Rahab's words. And so Joshua has the confidence to go and do all that happens based on not what the spies did and researched, but simply by what Rahab had said. It's important to remember in this story and everything that happens with the march around the walls and all those things that make us probably deeply uncomfortable. But it's important to remember before that march around the walls happened, there's a piece where Joshua, as they're approaching Jericho, and Joshua meets the commander of the army of the Lord and says, "Whose side are you on?" And the commander of the army of the Lord said, "Neither." It isn't about sides. I would also say the way that we understand how things in the Bible, we kind of need to remember sometimes how it's written. So Rebecca, I asked if I could tell the story. Rebecca had a friend, Jessie, staying with her, and they were talking about Comic-Con, which is, don't worry about it, it's a geek fest, and they were talking about an actor who might be there, and Jessie said, "Oh, if he's there, I am absolutely going to die." You all know what it means. Probably at some stage over the past year, I have used the phrase probably on more than one occasion to Mike talking about the football. Do you know what? They absolutely murdered us all over the field. Okay, I said that, Mike would know exactly what I meant. It wasn't that the Manchester, whatever, City players got our axes and axed our players to the ground. Although I probably also used a phrase like they axed us down as well. We understand that actually we can use phrases in certain ways. And the Old Testament would quite often talk about phrases that make us really uncomfortable, like they totally destroyed them. And it gives this idea of this complete wipeout. And I'm not saying there wasn't death or any of that. But actually, you will get like, it's just not the case. It's an overstatement. So you'll get a passage in Deuteronomy which says you'll basically destroy them all. Don't marry them. Don't do this. Don't do this with them. Well, if you've destroyed them all, you don't even need to mention the don't marry because you've destroyed them all. And so you get this, and you get these other patterns where it has battles and it wiped them all out, and then there were still more people around. So it's this idea of kind of giving this picture that is greater, I guess. It gives an image of what's happening in terms of the result without being the details. And this word where it's often used in terms of being kind of completely destroying could also mean not just a person and killing, but it can also mean an object, but also it can also mean putting something into a holy place. This object is holy, it's to be revered. Well, hang on, that's definitely not being destroyed, but it's exactly the same word. And so there's this idea, this almost, what it's doing is having the concept of separation happening. So something being separated. So it doesn't always mean they've gone in and they have wiped out everybody. So God, where is he when this is happening? Well, if I ask you the question, after they marched around the walls, what fell down? And if I asked you, where did Rahab live? Rahab lived in the walls fell down, Rahab lived in the walls. Clearly, a bit of the wall didn't fall down because it's where Rahab lived. And in this midst, if we want to think of it, of some form of judgment of God's, whatever is going on in that moment, of some kind of separation, there is also this act of grace that is based on the faith of a woman who puts this scarlet cord out. Again, we've already heard in the Exodus, they put blood on the doors, passers by. Ribbon, in the midst of this judgment, faith moment, and then we get to, again, everything, as I go on about, heads towards Jesus. In the midst of judgment, there's an act of faith for us, which means we have grace. And the woman rescuer is rescued. The woman from the margins is brought into a new community. And she marries a guy called Salmon. They have a child called Boaz. If you know the story with Ruth, they have a child called Obed. He has a child called Jesse. Jesse has the child King David, who have a child, Jesus. This woman on the edge was part of God's family. This messy story was part of God's perfect plan. And this rescuer was part of God's rescue plan. I want to say, if you feel for whatever reason that you are on the edges, you can still be part of God's family. If things are messy, you could be part of God's plan. He wants you to be part of his rescue. Let's pray. Dear God, when we read these stories, and there's all sorts of things that make us, sometimes these particular ones, uncomfortable for all manner of different reasons. But we thank you that through it we can still see you at work, your rescue at work. Lord, we thank you for Rahab. We thank you that she is an example to us all of faith. We thank you for what she did and how it teaches us to make a right decision, the right call, the right thing. And whatever our circumstances, however we feel about ourselves, help us to know that you want us part of your rescue plan. Amen.